The knife was at her throat before Sienna Johnson even realized someone was behind her. She'd been sitting on the rooftop of Hanguk International Academy, her sketchbook balanced on her knees, trying to capture the way the Seoul sunset painted the Han River in shades of amber and rose. It was her secret spot, the one place in this overwhelming city where she could breathe, where she could forget she was the only Black woman in a school full of Korea's wealthiest elite. But now the blade pressed cold against her skin, and a voice, smooth, cultured, speaking perfect English with barely a hint of accent, whispered in her ear, "You shouldn't have come up here tonight." Sienna's breath stopped. Her charcoal pencil clattered to the concrete. She tried to turn her head, but the knife's pressure increased, just enough to make her freeze. "Please," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. I didn't see anything. Liar." The word was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You've been up here for 20 minutes. You saw everything." And God help her, she had. 10 minutes ago, she'd watched 3 men in expensive suits drag a 4th man, bloodied, sobbing, begging in rapid Korean, onto this rooftop. She'd watched as the tallest one, a young man who moved with the lethal grace of a panther, had pulled out a gun. She'd watched as he'd pressed it to the sobbing man's forehead and spoken words she couldn't understand, but whose meaning was crystal clear. She'd been too terrified to move, to breathe, to do anything but press herself flat against the rooftop's storage shed and pray they wouldn't notice her. They'd left 5 minutes ago. The rooftop was empty again. The man they'd dragged up here gone. Whether alive or dead, Sienna didn't know and didn't want to know. She'd thought she was safe. She'd been wrong. Now, the knife holder circled around to face her, and Sienna's heart nearly stopped. Lee Tae-Hyun. She'd know that face anywhere. It was plastered across the school's donor wall. The Lee family, 3rd-generation Chaebol dynasty, owners of Lee Corp., one of Korea's most powerful conglomerates. But that wasn't why every woman at Hanguk whispered his name with a mixture of longing and fear. Tae-Hyun was devastatingly handsome. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, a strong jawline, intense dark eyes that seemed to see through to your soul, and lips that were almost sinfully perfect. He was 23, technically too old to be hanging around the graduate academy, but he still maintained connections here. A crown prince who wore designer suits like a second skin and looked at the world like he owned it, which Sienna had heard in whispered rumors he basically did, because the Lee family wasn't just rich. They were connected. The kind of connected that made people disappear. The kind that had ties to organizations that operated in shadows, where money and blood mix freely. Now, those dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin burn despite the knife still in his hand. "Sienna Johnson," he said, pronouncing her name carefully, as if tasting it. Age 20, graduate student in fine arts, transfer student from the United States, scholarship recipient. Father works for the African Union delegation, lives in Itaewon with minimal security. He tilted his head, the knife catching the dying light. "You really are everywhere you shouldn't be, aren't you? If you're new here, smash that subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when I drop the next part of this insane story. And drop a comment telling me what time it is where you are. I want to know who's staying up late with me on this wild journey." 3 months earlier, Sienna's life had been complicated but manageable. Her father, Kwame Johnson, had worked as Deputy Director of Economic Development for the African Union's Liaison Office in Washington, D.C., while her mother, Dr. Zainab Johnson, was a renowned cultural anthropologist who taught at Georgetown University. They'd lived in a modest townhouse in Maryland, and Sienna had attended a prestigious art school where she'd thrived among other creative students who understood her passion for drawing. But then, everything had fallen apart. Her father's position had been eliminated during budget cuts, and her mother's university had denied her tenure despite years of groundbreaking research on the African diaspora. The reason had never been explicitly stated, but Sienna had heard the whispered conversations. seen the tension in her parents' faces when they thought she wasn't looking. In America, despite their credentials and accomplishments, doors kept closing. Opportunities kept vanishing. The subtle and not so subtle racism had worn them down until staying felt like slowly suffocating. Sienna had just finished her undergraduate degree at Howard University, a fine arts major with honors, when her father had been offered a position with the African Union's Seoul office, focusing on trade agreements between African nations and South Korea. They'd taken it as a lifeline, a chance to start over in a place where, ironically, being visibly different might matter less than it had in the country they'd called home. They'd moved to Seoul that summer, leaving behind everything familiar for a city where she didn't speak the language and where the stares on the street ranged from curious to uncomfortable. Sienna had enrolled in Hanguk International Academy's prestigious graduate fine arts program, planning to earn her MFA before applying to galleries and teaching positions. The academy catered to diplomats' children, wealthy expats, and Korea's elite who wanted their graduate degrees to have international prestige. Classes were taught in English. The campus looked like a luxury resort, all glass and steel and manicured gardens, but nothing could have prepared Sienna for how alone she'd feel. She was one of only a handful of Black students in the entire graduate program. There were other international students, Americans, British, Japanese, but they all seemed to have formed their circles long ago. The few other American students, mostly white or Asian, treated her with polite distance that felt all too familiar. And the Korean students? They were polite but distant, moving in impenetrable social circles that Sienna couldn't even begin to navigate, so she'd retreated into her art, charcoal drawings and oil paintings of Seoul's contradictions, ancient temples shadowed by glass skyscrapers, traditional hanbok next to Gucci storefronts, the beautiful loneliness of being a stranger in a stunning city. She drew the Han River at sunset, the crowded streets of Myeongdong, the quiet corners of Bukchon where history whispered through narrow alleyways. She discovered the rooftop by accident in September, climbing up the maintenance stairs while looking for a quiet place to sketch. It was supposed to be locked, but someone had broken the padlock months ago and never reported it. Sienna had claimed it as her sanctuary, going up there most evenings after her last seminar to draw and watch the city lights come alive. She'd never seen anyone else up there, until tonight. She'd been so absorbed in her drawing, trying to capture the way the dying sunlight turned the glass towers into pillars of gold, that she hadn't heard the rooftop door open, hadn't noticed the men until their voices, angry, harsh Korean, had cut through her concentration. By then it was too late to leave. She ducked behind the storage shed, her heart pounding, and watched in frozen horror as they dragged the bloodied man across the rooftop. The tallest one, Lee Tae-Hyun, though she hadn't known his name then, had been calm, almost bored. He'd spoken to the man in Korean, his voice never rising, while his two companions held their victim on his knees. Sienna had seen the gun, seen Tae-Hyun check the chamber with casual expertise, seen him press the barrel to the sobbing man's forehead. She'd squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch, certain she was about to hear a gunshot and become a witness to murder. But the shot never came. When she dared to look again, Tae-Hyun was putting the gun away. The man was still crying, but he was alive. Tae-Hyun said something final, and his companions dragged the man back toward the door. Tae-Hyun had paused at the edge of the rooftop, looking out over Seoul with his hands in his pockets. For a moment, in profile against the sunset, he'd looked almost sad, young, human. Then he'd straightened his shoulders, that mask of cold control sliding back into place, and followed his men downstairs. Sienna had waited 10 minutes, her whole body shaking before daring to move. She'd been gathering her things, ready to run, when she'd heard the footsteps behind her. Now, Tae-Hyun stood before her, the knife still in his hand, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. Up close, he was even more striking. He had to be over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that filled out his expensive black suit perfectly. His face was all sharp angles and perfect proportions, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or movie screens. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Dark, intense, calculating, they seemed to strip away every defense she had. And despite the terror coursing through her veins, Sienna couldn't help but notice how undeniably attractive he was. Dangerous? Yes. Terrifying? Absolutely. But also magnetic in a way that made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Please," Sienna said again, forcing herself to meet those intense eyes. "I won't tell anyone. I swear. I don't even know what I saw. You saw me extract information from a man who stole from my family," Tae-Hyun said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "You saw me threaten his life. You heard him confess to working with the Hwang family, our rivals, to sabotage a shipment worth $50 million. He took a step closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne. Expensive, masculine, intoxicating. That makes you a witness. And witnesses are problematic." Sienna's throat felt tight. She was a grown woman, not some scared kid. But right now, she felt small and vulnerable in a way she hadn't since childhood. But then Tae-Hyun did something unexpected. He folded the knife closed and slipped it into his pocket. "However," he continued, his tone shifting to something almost conversational, "killing you would create more problems than it solves. Your father is a diplomat. Your mother is well connected in academic circles across 2 continents. Your death would attract attention. Police investigations, international incident, media coverage." He smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "My family prefers to operate quietly. So, you're not going to kill me?" Sienna's voice was steadier now, some of her natural boldness returning. "Not today," Tae-Hyun said. "And somehow, that was even more frightening. But I am going to make sure you stay quiet. Which means, Miss Johnson, that as of right now, you belong to me. I don't understand. It's simple." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and her own phone buzzed in her pocket. "I just sent you my contact information. From now on, I own your schedule. Where you go, who you see, what you do, I approve it all. You'll tell your parents we're friends, study partners. You can even tell them I'm helping you network in Seoul's art scene, if that makes it easier." His smile widened. "And in return, I'll make sure no one in my organization or any rival organization touches you or your family. You stay alive, and all you have to do is stay close to me and keep your mouth shut." Sienna's mind raced. "You're blackmailing me." "I'm protecting you," Tae-Hyun corrected. "There's a difference. You witnessed something tonight that could get you killed by a dozen different people who'd rather that information didn't exist. But if you're seen under my protection, if it's known that you're mine, then you're untouchable. No one will dare harm you. And if I say no? If I go to the police?" Tae-Hyun's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Then I can't protect you from what happens next. And Miss Johnson?" He stepped even closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I think you're smarter than that." He was right. God help her. He was right. Sienna's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and looked at the contact he'd sent. Just a number, no name, but she knew it was his. "One more thing," Tae-Hyun said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. "Don't try to run. Don't try to hide. I have people everywhere. At your school, in your neighborhood, watching your father's office, monitoring your mother's research contacts. If you disappear, I'll know within minutes. And if you try to betray me?" He leaned in, his lips close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "I'll make sure the last thing you see is your parents suffering for your mistake." It wasn't an empty threat. Sienna could hear the absolute certainty in his voice, could feel it in the controlled power of his presence. This wasn't a game to him. This was survival. And somehow, inexplicably, horribly, she'd become a piece on his chessboard. "Do we understand each other?" Tae-Hyun asked, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. Sienna lifted her chin, refusing to be completely cowed. Crystal clear. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Appreciation? Good girl. He said it in a way that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. Go home. I'll see you at school tomorrow. And Sienna? He smiled again. That devastating, dangerous smile. Welcome to my world. Try not to die. Then he was gone, disappearing through the rooftop door as silently as he'd appeared, leaving Sienna alone with the sunset and the crushing weight of her new reality. She stood there for a long time, her legs shaking, before finally gathering her things and stumbling downstairs. The security guard at the school's main entrance gave her a concerned look. Miss Johnson, are you all right? You look shaken. Just tired, she managed, forcing a smile. Long day. She walked home through Itaewon's crowded streets in a daze, barely registering the neon signs and street food vendors and clusters of American soldiers on leave. Her neighborhood was known for its international flavor, its mix of expats and foreigners. And normally, she found comfort in seeing other Black faces, hearing English and various African languages mixed with Korean. But tonight, it all felt alien and dangerous. At home, her parents were in the kitchen, her mother cooking while her father set the table. They were speaking in their native language, one of several West African languages they'd taught Sienna growing up, which they used when they wanted privacy or when they were discussing something serious. Sienna, baby. Her father's face lit up when he saw her. How was school? Fine, she lied, forcing a smile. Just tired. Long seminar on contemporary African art. Her mother studied her with sharp eyes. Dr. Zainab Johnson didn't miss much. You sure that's all? You look stressed. I'm fine, Mama. Really. Sienna kissed her mother's cheek and headed to her room before they could ask more questions. She locked her door, sat on her bed, and stared at the number Tae-Hyun had sent. This was insane. She should tell her parents everything. They could go to the police, to the embassy, get protection, maybe even leave Korea entirely. But even as she thought it, Sienna knew it wouldn't work. Tae-Hyun had made it clear. He had eyes everywhere. And if the Lee family was as powerful as the rumors suggested, going to the police might just get her family killed faster. Besides, where would they even go? Back to the United States, where her parents had already been broken down by years of struggling against invisible barriers? Back to a country where they'd lost everything and had nothing waiting for them? No. She was trapped. And the only way out was through. But as she looked at her reflection in her bedroom mirror, her rich brown skin, her confident curves in a fitted tank top and jeans, her natural hair in a sleek bun, Sienna made a decision. If she was going to be dragged into Lee Tae-Hyun's world, she wasn't going to go quietly. She wasn't going to be some scared victim. She was going to survive this. And maybe, just maybe, she'd figure out how to beat him at his own game. The next morning, Sienna walked into Hanguk International Academy, feeling like she was walking into a battlefield. She'd dressed deliberately, a form-fitting black turtleneck that hugged her curves, high-waisted dark jeans that showed off her figure, ankle boots with a slight heel that made her legs look endless. Her natural hair was styled in a high puff, her makeup subtle but flawless, highlighting her cheekbones and full lips. If she was going to face Lee Tae-Hyun again, she was going to do it looking like she belonged in his world of wealth and power. The stairs started the moment she walked through the main entrance. They always did. Being one of the few Black women on campus made her stand out, but today felt different, more intense. As if everyone somehow knew something had shifted. She made it through her morning seminar on post-colonial art theory, in a fog, her mind constantly drifting back to last night, to Tae-Hyun's dark eyes, to the knife at her throat, to the way he'd said, "You belong to me," like it was a simple fact rather than a threat. At lunch, She headed to the graduate student lounge, a smaller, more exclusive space than the main cafeteria, with leather couches and a coffee bar. She typically ate alone here, working on her laptop or sketching while the Korean graduate students socialized in their own groups, until she felt someone sit down beside her on the couch. Sienna looked up, her heart stopping. Lee Tae-Hyun sat beside her, looking impossibly perfect in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her entire semester's tuition. His dark hair was styled back from his face, showing off those sharp cheekbones and intense eyes. He wore a slight smile that made every woman in the lounge turn to stare. "Hello, Sienna," he said pleasantly, as if they were old friends. "I thought we could have lunch together. Get to know each other better." The lounge had gone quiet. Sienna could feel dozens of eyes on them, could hear the whispers starting. Is that Lee Tae-Hyun? Why is he sitting with her? Who even is she? The scholarship student? The black girl from America? Sienna's throat was dry, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes held a warning. "You need your strength. We have a lot to discuss." She forced herself to take a bite of her salad, though it tasted like cardboard. Tae-Hyun leaned back in his seat, completely at ease. His arms stretched along the back of the couch behind her. The casual possessiveness of the gesture wasn't lost on anyone watching. "So, tell me about yourself, Sienna Johnson. What does a diplomat's daughter do for fun in Seoul?" It was surreal. He was acting like they were on a date, like he hadn't threatened her life less than 24 hours ago. "I draw," Sienna said quietly. "Paint. That's it." "I know. I've seen your work." At her shocked expression, he smiled. "Did you think I didn't do my research? I've seen your Instagram, your art portfolio, your Howard University thesis on contemporary African art and identity. You're talented. Your use of color and cultural symbolism is particularly impressive." The fact that he'd studied her work so thoroughly made her skin prickle with awareness. "What do you want from me? Right now, I want you to smile and pretend we're having a pleasant conversation." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Because everyone in this lounge is watching, and I need them to believe that you and I are close, that you're under my protection." "Why?" "Because word travels fast in our world. By tonight, every organization in Seoul will know that Lee Tae-Hyun has claimed the African diplomat's daughter. They'll know you're off limits." He took a sip of his coffee, his movements elegant. "It's the safest thing for both of us." "Both of us?" Sienna couldn't help the edge in her voice. "You're the one with the knife and the connections. How am I a threat to you?" Taehyun's expression shifted, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "You'd be surprised. Even princes have enemies, Sienna, especially princes." Before she could respond, two people approached them. One was a woman, stunning, with long black hair and a body-hugging designer dress that showed off her model-thin figure. She looked at Sienna with barely concealed hostility. "Appa," she said sweetly to Tae-Hyun, using the Korean honorific. "What are you doing here? We were supposed to have lunch together." The other was a young man, maybe Tae-Hyun's age, with sharp features and an expensive suit. He studied Sienna with open curiosity. "Yoon Seo-yeon," Tae-Hyun said to the woman, his tone cool. "I don't recall making plans with you, and Park Jin-woo." He nodded at the young man. "To what do I owe this interruption?" Seo-yeon's perfect face tightened. "Everyone's talking about you sitting with her, the scholarship student." She said it like an insult. "People are confused." "Then let me clear up their confusion." Tae-Hyun reached over and took Sienna's hand, his grip firm and warm. "This is Sienna Johnson. She's with me. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." The lounge had gone completely silent now. Sienna's heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay calm, to not pull her hand away. Jin-woo's eyes narrowed. "Since when do you take interest in foreigners?" Tae-Hyun, "Since I decided to." Tae-Hyun's smile was sharp. Is there something else you wanted, or can I return to my lunch? Jin-woo studied them for another moment, then nodded slowly. Of course. Enjoy your meal. He left, but Seo-yeon remained, her eyes burning with jealousy and rage as she looked at Sienna. You should be careful, scholarship girl, she said in English, her accent thick. Seoul can be dangerous for people who don't know their place. Seo-yeon! Tae-Hyun's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. Leave, now. She flinched, then turned and stalked away, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Sienna's hand was still in Tae-Hyun's. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Let them see, he murmured. Let them all see that you're mine. There was that word again, mine. It sent a confusing shiver through her. Part fear, part something else she didn't want to examine. I'm not anyone's, Sienna said quietly, finally yanking her hand free. Tae-Hyun's smile returned, amused now. You're brave. I like that. Most people are too terrified to defy me. I'm terrified too, she admitted. I'm just not going to let it control me. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable, devastatingly handsome. Good. Fear with courage will keep you alive in my world. Just don't let the courage make you reckless. The bell chimed, signaling the end of lunch. Students began to disperse. Though Sienna could feel their stares following her, Tae-Hyun stood, adjusting his suit jacket. I'll walk you to class. I can walk myself. I wasn't asking. He waited, and Sienna had no choice but to gather her things and follow him. They walked through the hallways in silence. Tae-Hyun's presence beside her like a force field that made other students part like water. No one spoke to them. No one dared. At her studio classroom door, he paused. After your last class, the library, 3rd floor, private study room 7. Be there at 5. And if I don't, then I'll come find you, and you won't like how that conversation goes. He leaned in, his voice dropping. Stop fighting this, Sienna. You're in my world now. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be. Then he was gone, leaving Sienna standing in the doorway, her heart racing and her mind spinning with 1,000 questions. She didn't pay attention in any of her afternoon classes, couldn't focus on her advanced painting studio or her seminar on Korean contemporary art. All she could think about was Tae-Hyun's dark eyes, his warnings, his claim that she belonged to him. And the terrifying part? A small, reckless part of her was curious about what came next. Study room 7 was soundproof and private, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's business district. Sienna arrived at 5, her stomach in knots. Tae-Hyun was already there, sitting at the table with his suit jacket draped over the chair, his white dress shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He looked up when she entered. Closed the door. She did, her hand steady despite her nerves. Sit. Sienna sat across from him, setting her bag down but keeping her posture confident. For a long moment, Tae-Hyun just studied her. Then he pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. What is this? Sienna asked. Your life. Everything I know about you. Read it. She opened the folder with steady hands, refusing to show weakness. It was all there. Her birth certificate, born in Washington, D.C., to African immigrant parents. Her school records from Maryland and Howard University. Her parents' employment histories, including the painful documentation of her father's position being eliminated and her mother's denied tenure. Her medical records, photos of their apartment in Itaewon, including shots through her bedroom window, screenshots of her text messages with friends back in the States, even her graduate thesis proposal on reclaiming identity, Black African perspectives in contemporary art. There were details about her parents' struggles in America, her father's applications to over 50 positions before accepting the Seoul posting, her mother's research papers that had been rejected by journal after journal despite their quality, the quiet discrimination they'd faced, documented in cold, clinical detail. Sienna felt sick, but she kept her expression neutral. How did you get all this? I have resources, Tae-Hyun said simply. I told you. I know everything about you, Sienna Johnson. Where you go, who you see, what you care about. And I need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Oh, this isn't a game. The people I deal with, the Hwang family, the Choi organization, even rivals within my own family, they would use every piece of information in that folder to hurt you if they thought it would get to me. That's why you need my protection. That's why you need to do exactly what I say. Why me? Sienna's voice was steady. Why do I have to matter to you at all? Just let me go. Forget I saw anything. Because I can't. Tae-Hyun's control slipped for just a moment, frustration flashing across his face. Don't you understand? The moment you witnessed what happened on that rooftop, you became a liability. My father's associates know you exist now. They're already asking questions about the African woman on the rooftop. If I don't claim you as mine, if I don't make it clear you're under my protection, they'll eliminate you just to be safe. Your father knows about me? Lee Dong-wook knows everything that happens in his organization. Tae-Hyun's jaw tightened. And right now, he's waiting to see how I handle this situation. It's a test. A test? Sienna's voice rose slightly. My life is a test for you? Welcome to being the heir to a criminal empire, Tae-Hyun said bitterly. Every decision is a test. Every move is watched. And if I fail, if I show weakness or make the wrong choice, I'm not just putting myself at risk. I'm putting my younger sister at risk, my mother, everyone I care about. For the first time, Sienna saw something beyond the cold mask. She saw fear, exhaustion, the weight of a world she couldn't begin to understand. How old are you? She asked suddenly. 23. And you're already doing this? Running operations, threatening people, managing all of this? I've been groomed for this since I was 12, Tae-Hyun said flatly. I attended my first business meeting, which was actually an interrogation, when I was 14. I made my first kill when I was 19. He said it without emotion, like he was reciting facts from a textbook. This is my life, Sienna. This is all I've ever known. The casual mention of murder should have terrified her, and it did. But it also made her see him differently. Not as a monster, but as someone trapped in a cage just like she was. Someone who'd never had the chance to be normal, to make normal choices, to imagine a different life. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Tae-Hyun blinked, clearly not expecting that. For what? For whatever happened that made this your normal. For the fact that you've never had a choice. She met his eyes. I'm angry that you're dragging me into this. I'm terrified of what might happen to me and my family. But I'm also sorry that you've had to live like this. For several long seconds, Tae-Hyun just stared at her. Then something in his expression shifted, softened just slightly. You're different, he said finally. Most people look at me and see either a threat or a prize. But you see a person. Isn't that what you are? Not in my world. He closed the folder between them. In my world, people are assets or liabilities, tools or targets. There's no room for personhood. That sounds lonely. Tae-Hyun's laugh was hollow. It is, but it's also safer. Caring about people makes you vulnerable, gives your enemies leverage. Is that why you don't have friends? Just employees and rivals? I have associates, people who work for me or with me. But friends? He shook his head. I can't afford friends, Sienna. Everyone wants something from me, my family's money, my influence, my protection. No one just wants me. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This was the criminal who'd held a knife to her throat, who'd threatened her family, who'd invaded every aspect of her privacy. But he was also just a 23-year-old who'd been robbed of a normal life, who'd killed someone at 19, who'd never known what it felt like to be wanted for himself rather than what he could provide. I don't want anything from you, Sienna said, except to be left alone. I can't give you that, but maybe... Tae-Hyun hesitated, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. Maybe we can make this bearable, for both of us. What do you mean? I mean, yes, you're under my protection. Yes, you need to be seen with me to follow certain rules for your own safety. But maybe it doesn't have to be a prison. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and her phone buzzed. I just sent you my real number, not the business one, my personal cell. If you're scared, if something happens, if you just need to talk to someone who understands being trapped, you can call me. Sienna stared at her phone, then back at him. Why would you do that? Because despite what you think, I'm not a monster. I'm just trying to survive, same as you. Tae-Hyun stood, gathering his things. And because maybe it would be nice to have one person in my life who sees me as human. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Sienna? That woman at lunch? Seo-yeon? Stay away from her. She's Park Jin-woo's sister, and the Park family has been trying to arrange a marriage between us for years. She sees you as competition. I'm not competing for anything, Sienna said firmly. She doesn't know that. Tae-Hyun's smile was grim. In her mind, I'm showing you attention that should be hers, which makes you a target. Great. As if I didn't have enough problems. You'll be fine. Just don't go anywhere alone. And if she or anyone else threatens you, call me immediately. He opened the door, then looked back one more time. And Sienna? Thank you. For what? For not looking at me like I'm a monster. Even though I probably am. Then he was gone, leaving Sienna alone in the study room with her racing thoughts and the growing, uncomfortable realization that Lee Tae-Hyun was far more complicated than she'd ever imagined. And perhaps more dangerous than she'd feared, because the monster she could hate and fear was easier to deal with than the broken man underneath, the one who made her heart ache despite everything. The one who, despite the danger and the threats, she found herself undeniably attracted to in ways that terrified her more than any knife ever could. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, surreal blur. True to his word, Tae-Hyun inserted himself into Sienna's daily life with calculated precision. They had lunch together every day in the graduate lounge, always sitting close enough that his presence was unmistakable. He started appearing at her art exhibitions and critiques, standing in the back with his arms crossed, watching her present with an intensity that made her skin flush. He walked her to her car after evening classes, always polite, always proper, and always surrounded by an invisible aura of danger that kept other students at a careful distance. The attention was suffocating. Suddenly, Sienna Johnson, a scholarship student, artist, outsider, was the woman who Lee Tae-Hyun had chosen to spend time with. The rumors started immediately and spread like wildfire through the academy. Were they dating? Was it a sugar daddy situation? Had her father done business with his family? Was she his mistress? Sienna ignored them all, focusing instead on surviving each interaction with Tae-Hyun without revealing how conflicted she felt. Because the strange thing was, he wasn't cruel. He didn't threaten her again after that first night. During their lunches, he actually discussed art with surprising depth and knowledge. He was cultured, intelligent, and had an unexpected appreciation for African contemporary artists. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, listened when she talked about her artistic vision, and once, just once, smiled at something she said with such genuine warmth that it had stolen her breath. It was confusing, terrifying. And against every ounce of common sense she possessed, Sienna found herself starting to look forward to seeing him. That was her first mistake. The second was not realizing that someone else was watching. It happened on a Friday evening, 3 weeks after that first night on the rooftop. Sienna was working late in her private studio space, a small room the academy provided for graduate students. She'd been painting for hours, working on a large canvas that explored themes of displacement and belonging, using bold colors and African textile patterns mixed with Seoul's urban landscape. She was so absorbed in her work, paint-stained and wearing an old tank top and leggings, that she didn't hear the studio door open. Working late, I see. Sienna spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Park Jin-woo stood in her doorway, impeccably dressed in a designer suit, his expression pleasant, but his eyes cold and calculating. "The studios are supposed to be locked after 8, Sienna said, setting down her brush carefully. "How did you get in?" "I have keys to most places in Seoul," Jinwoo said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. One of the perks of being a park. Sienna's hand moved toward her phone on the nearby table, but Jinwoo was faster. He crossed the room in 3 strides and picked up her phone, examining it with mild interest. "Looking for this? Were you planning to call someone? Perhaps Tae-Hyun? What do you want?" Sienna kept her voice steady, though fear was crawling up her spine. "I want to understand what game you're playing," Jinwoo said, pocketing her phone. 3 weeks ago, no one knew your name. Now, you're all anyone can talk about. The African woman who caught Lee Tae-Hyun's attention. The scholarship student who somehow managed to intrigue the most eligible bachelor in Seoul's underground. "I'm not playing any game," Sienna said firmly, "and I'd like my phone back. In a moment." Jinwoo circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "You see, I have a problem. The Park family has been negotiating with the Lee family for years. My sister, Seo-yeon, was supposed to marry Tae-Hyun. It would have united our organizations, created the most powerful alliance in Seoul. But then you appeared. I have nothing to do with—" "Don't insult my intelligence," Jinwoo cut her off. "Tae-Hyun doesn't waste time on people who don't serve a purpose. So what are you? A witness? A liability he's keeping close? Or something more interesting?" Sienna's mind raced. She couldn't tell him about the rooftop. That would only make her more valuable as leverage. "We're friends," she said. "That's all. He's been helping me navigate Seoul's art scene." Jinwoo laughed, and it was a cruel sound. "Friends? Lee Tae-Hyun doesn't have friends. He has assets and enemies. Which one are you, Miss Johnson?" He was standing too close now. Sienna could smell his expensive cologne, could see the dangerous gleam in his eyes. "I think you're more than a friend," Jinwoo continued softly. "I think you saw something you shouldn't have. And I think Tae-Hyun claimed you before anyone else could use you against him." He reached out, his fingers brushing a paint smudge on her cheek. "Which makes you very valuable to me." Sienna jerked back. "Don't touch me." "Or what? You'll call Tae-Hyun?" Jinwoo smiled. "Go ahead. Oh wait, I have your phone. Someone will notice I'm missing. Will they? It's Friday night. The building is almost empty. Your parents think you're working late. I checked your calendar. And Tae-Hyun?" Jinwoo pulled out his own phone, showing her a text message. "He thinks you went home early because you weren't feeling well. I sent that from your phone 5 minutes ago." Panic flared in Sienna's chest, but she forced it down. She was not going to be a helpless victim. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "Information about the Lee family's operations, about what you witnessed, about Tae-Hyun's weaknesses." Jinwoo's pleasant expression never wavered. "You're going to tell me everything, and then you're going to become my informant. Every conversation you have with Tae-Hyun, every piece of information you learn, you're going to report it to me. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure your parents have a very unfortunate accident on their way home from work one night." Jinwoo said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. "Or perhaps your mother's research visa will be revoked, or your father will be accused of corruption and expelled from Korea. I have so many options, Miss Johnson. And unlike Tae-Hyun, I don't have any sentimental attachment to you." Sienna's mind was racing, looking for options, for escape routes. The studio had only one door, and Jinwoo was blocking it. The windows didn't open. Her phone was in his pocket. "I need time to think." "No, you don't." Jinwoo stepped closer, crowding her against the table where her paints were scattered. "You're going to agree right now, or I'm going to make a phone call that ruins your family's life. Your choice." Sienna's hand found a palette knife on the table behind her. 8 inches of flexible steel with a pointed tip. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. "I said, Jinwoo began. The studio door slammed open with a force that made the walls shake. Tae-Hyun stood in the doorway. He looked different than Sienna had ever seen him. His usual cold control completely shattered, replaced by something feral and dangerous. His eyes were blazing with fury, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping. He wore all black, turtleneck, slacks, leather jacket, and he looked every inch the criminal heir he was. "Park Jinwoo," Tae-Hyun said, his voice soft and deadly. "Step away from her, now." Jinwoo's confident expression faltered. "Tae-Hyun, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're threatening what's mine." Tae-Hyun walked into the room with predatory grace, and suddenly, Sienna understood why people feared him. This wasn't the cultured art enthusiast who had lunch with her. This was the man from the rooftop, the killer. "You have 3 seconds to step away from her before I break every bone in your hand." "You're overreacting," Jinwoo said, but he took a step back from Sienna. "I was just talking to her. You took her phone. You blocked her exit. You threatened her family." Tae-Hyun's voice was getting quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. "And you touched her face without permission. How did you—" "I have cameras in every studio in this building," Tae-Hyun said flatly. "I've been watching you threaten her for the last 10 minutes while I drove here. The only reason you're still breathing is because I wanted to hear exactly what you'd say, what you'd offer, what threats you'd make." He smiled, and it was terrifying. "Now I know. And now you're going to leave. Or what?" Jinwoo tried to regain his composure. "You'll start a war between our families over some woman." "Yes." Tae-Hyun said it without hesitation. "I will burn down everything you and your family have built, Jinwoo. I will destroy your shipping operations, expose your money laundering, leak evidence of every illegal deal you've ever made. I will make sure the Park family name becomes synonymous with corruption and failure. And I'll do it all with a smile, because you made the catastrophic mistake of threatening her." The absolute certainty in his voice made Jinwoo pale. "Give me her phone," Tae-Hyun demanded. Jinwoo pulled Sienna's phone from his pocket and handed it over with shaking fingers. "Now get out. And Jinwoo?" Tae-Hyun's smile widened. "If you or anyone in your family comes near Sienna Johnson again, if you so much as look at her, I'll consider it a declaration of war. Do we understand each other?" Jinwoo nodded stiffly, then practically ran from the studio. The moment he was gone, Tae-Hyun's demeanor shifted. He crossed to Sienna in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cup her face, his dark eyes searching hers with urgent intensity. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Did he—" "I'm fine," Sienna said, her voice shakier than she wanted it to be. He wanted information. About you. About what I saw. I know. I heard everything." Tae-Hyun's thumbs brushed her cheekbones, his touch surprisingly gentle. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have had someone watching you. I should have anticipated." "How did you know I was in trouble?" Sienna asked. "I didn't call you. The text you supposedly sent me was wrong. You always use proper punctuation, and the message didn't have any. I knew immediately something was off." His hands were still on her face, his eyes still searching hers. "I checked the studio cameras and saw him in here with you. I've been driving at illegal speeds to get here." Despite everything, despite the fear still coursing through her veins, Sienna felt something warm bloom in her chest. He'd noticed her texting style. He'd known something was wrong immediately. He'd dropped everything to get to her. "You have cameras in my studio?" she asked, trying to regain some equilibrium. "I have cameras everywhere you go," Tae-Hyun admitted. "Your studio, the hallways, the parking garage, outside your apartment building. I told you. I'm protecting you. That means knowing where you are and who you're with at all times." It should have felt invasive, creepy, controlling. But right now, with the adrenaline still pumping and Jinwoo's threats echoing in her mind, it just felt safe. "Thank you," Sienna whispered, "for coming. For—" She didn't finish the sentence because Tae-Hyun pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest with a fierce protectiveness that made her breath catch. I was terrified, he admitted, against her hair. When I saw him crowding you, threatening you, I've never been that scared in my life. If he'd hurt you... He didn't, Sienna said, her hands coming up to grip his leather jacket. You got here in time. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms in her paint-splattered studio. Two people who'd been thrust together by violence and threat, but who were finding something unexpected in the forced proximity. Finally, Tae-Hyun pulled back just enough to look at her. His hands moved from her back to frame her face again, his dark eyes intense. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Something I should have told you from the beginning. What? Us. It's not just about protection anymore. It hasn't been for a while. His thumb traced her bottom lip, his gaze following the movement. You've gotten under my skin, Sienna Johnson. You see me as a person when the rest of the world sees a title or a threat. You challenge me. You don't fear me, even though you probably should. And God help me, I'm starting to care about you in ways that are dangerous for both of us. Sienna's heart was racing for entirely different reasons now. Tae-Hyun, I know it's wrong. I know this started with threats and force. I know you have every reason to hate me. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm against her lips. But I need you to know that what I feel for you now, it's real, and it's terrifying. Sienna should have pushed him away, should have reminded him that this was Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or any number of psychological phenomena that weren't real attraction. But she couldn't, because the truth was, she felt it too. The pull, the connection, the way her heart raced when he walked into a room, the way she found herself thinking about him at odd hours, the way his rare smiles made her feel like she'd won something precious. This is insane, she whispered. I know. You threatened my family, you invaded my privacy, you forced me into this situation. I know. I should hate you. You should. His lips were so close to hers now. Do you? Sienna looked into his dark eyes, saw the vulnerability there, the fear that she might say yes. I don't know what I feel, she admitted honestly, but it's not hate. That was all the permission Tae-Hyun needed. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce, consuming, desperate, like he'd been holding himself back for weeks and finally couldn't anymore. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressing her back against the table, and Sienna found herself kissing him back with equal intensity. Her hands slid under his leather jacket, feeling the hard muscle of his back through his thin turtleneck. Oh, he tasted like mint and something darker, addictive. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, her neck, finding sensitive spots that made her gasp. Sienna? He breathed against her skin, his voice rough. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong. It is wrong, she managed, even as her hands pulled him closer. It's completely wrong. And then why does it feel so right? She didn't have an answer for that. So instead, she pulled his mouth back to hers. They kissed until they were both breathless, until Sienna's lips were swollen and her body was humming with want. When they finally broke apart, Tae-Hyun rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. I should take you home, he said reluctantly. You should, Sienna agreed, but neither of them moved. This changes everything, Tae-Hyun warned. If people know I care about you, really care about you, it makes you an even bigger target. I know. I'll have to increase your security. More cameras, more guards. I'll probably have to have someone follow you everywhere. That sounds suffocating. It's necessary. His hands cupped her face again, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. I can't lose you, Sienna. Not now. Not when I've just found you. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel wanted, protected, treasured. What happens now? She asked. Now? Tae-Hyun's smile was slow and devastating. Now, you're officially mine. Not as a liability or an asset, but as mine, my woman, under my protection and in my life. And anyone who tries to take you from me will learn exactly why the Lee family is feared. He kissed her again, softer this time, sweeter. Come on, he said finally, pulling back. I'm taking you home. And tomorrow, we're going to have a very serious conversation about your safety protocols. Tae-Hyun, and about us, he continued, his eyes intense. About what this means, about where we go from here. But tonight, I just want to make sure you're safe. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and led her out of the studio. As they walked through the empty halls toward the parking garage, Sienna realized that everything had shifted. She wasn't just a witness he was protecting anymore. She wasn't just a liability he was managing. She was his, and he was hers. And God helped them both, because in Lee Tae-Hyun's world, love was the most dangerous weapon of all. What happens next? How will Seo-yeon and Jin-woo react to this new development? What will Tae-Hyun's father say when he finds out his heir has fallen for the woman he was supposed to silence? And can Sienna and Tae-Hyun survive the dangerous world they're building together? Drop a comment telling me what time it is where you are, smash that like button if you're completely hooked on this story, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss part 2. Because trust me, things are about to get intense, passionate, and dangerous as hell. The Mafia world doesn't forgive weakness, and love? That's the biggest weakness of all. See you in the next one.